to Office Hours, where we want to teach you what they don't teach you in the classrooms about creating one-to-one personal experiences for your prospects and customers. On today's episode, I want to keep going on this thread about content and where content fits in building one-to-one interaction. So who better than to have Jessica come join me from the team over at Moveable Ink. Jessica, welcome to Office Hours. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, I'm Kay. Thanks for having me.
So I want to first and foremost, just jump right into a time machine, right? I want to go all the way back to 2009, 2010, when personalization first really jumped out into the scene for marketers. Going back to that era, what do you remember of personalization back in 2009, 2010?
It's funny, my first marketing jobs were before that, and we really didn't have any sort of marketing automation, email marketing tools. Probably as sophisticated as we got was a mail merge in Outlook. So starting in 2009, 2010, Moveable Ink really hit the scene from the email perspective and invented this concept of open time personalization. That was one of the first ways that you could personalize your digital channels based on if you opened up an email on a computer in Boston or on your phone in New York. So that was kind of, I think, one of the exciting and early ways that consumers started to see that brands could at least target the experience a little bit to them.
Wow. So back in 2009, 2010, were you part of the team at Moveable Ink, or were you a marketer hoping to aspire to use more personalized content?
So it's funny, I actually was pitched Moveable Inks, I think starting in 2011 and 2012 at another company, thought it was really cool, aspired to, get that technology one day, and joined the team at the beginning of 2015.
Wow. So 2015, we're now here in 2021. And you're now the VP of marketing at Moveable Ink. What has that journey looked like for you?
So it's been a really exciting opportunity and journey. Have loved working with the team, grew from about 75 people to over 300, and really got to see the evolution of our product and also the ways that we work with different types of customers. What I love about Moveable is that every customer uses it in their own way to make sure that it maps to their strategy, their brand, and what they're trying to achieve. So I've really just been able to see a tremendous evolution in what's happening in kind of the industry overall, and then with our product.
That's so cool. I mean, you're right there at the corner, the center fulcrum point of trying to drive better interactions through content with prospects and marketers and sellers. And when I think of personalized, and I go back to my own days when I was in the 2010 thinking about it blew my mind that I could add in a snippet and it would say first name and last name. And that back then, stupid MK of 10 years ago was oh, this is the best it's ever going to get for marketers.
They know my name.
Yeah, they know my name. This is insane. But now that's table stakes. You can't not get, anytime I get an email that doesn't have that snippet with my personal information on it, I'm okay, automated, done, cancel. But are you seeing the same thing on your end as well too, where the token is what started it all, and now there's so much more opportunity for us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for both of us, and customers in general, expectations go up every time you have a great digital experience. So I shared a quote Brendan Witcher from Forrester said at our conference: your competition isn't who you compete with for sales, it's every single customer interaction that your customers have. They have a great digital experience that raises the bar for you. So I think from the personalization perspective, marketers need to know that their customers are at a point that if they get something, it doesn't feel relevant to them, they're going to tune out, or they might actually, change their brand their brand loyalties based on, not having a good, solid experience.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? It's not, I love that quote, right? It's not your competitors, right? It's TikTok. It's those kids that live in a house in the middle of LA who are creating just crazy bingeable content on TikTok that are vying for your eyeballs of your audiences. And so I'm a terrible host because I didn't also say what Movable Ink does. So could you give us a rundown of how Movable Ink is helping to empower marketers to get those eyeballs and to stop letting the competition of all sorts vie for the eyeballs and time and energy of your consumers?
Yeah, and exactly as you said. So we live in a time that attention is scarce and it's an incredibly important resource that your customers can give to you. So Movable Ink started off as an email personalization tool where you could personalize at the moment of open based on brand context, like how much inventory you have or the customer's context. Since then, we've really turned into a tool that allow marketers across a number of different direct channels to create one-to-one, truly personalized experiences based on proprietary data, based on their context, based on things like loyalty status, so that every single touch point that they're getting from a brand is relevant and specific to them.
Wow. And one of the, like, when you say touch point, every single touch point, that's a lot in this day and age. I mean, our team alone is managing like 5, 6 different social channels, let alone our, email automation channels, let alone our BDR outbound prospecting emails, let alone, like, the list just goes on and on. But every single one, you can truly get one-to-one with the information you have through your platform.
Yeah, any channel that can leverage HTML, you can use Movable Ink to create personalized content. So
Wow.
as of right now, email is still a heavily focused channel for us. Mobile app and push notifications are one that's really emerging as a hot channel, but we've continued to kind of push into, we want to be anywhere that a pixel is served to a consumer, like aspirationally, we want to make sure that that's a personalized touch point.
Wow. So with access to so many different, like, very pivotal moments throughout the customer journey, where does a marketer start? Like, how do they take each one of these? Because I assume not every touch point along the customer journey is going to look the same, it's going to feel the
Mhm.
same, or the desired outcome is going to be the same. If a marketer wants to go in and start thinking about personalizing their content, and then even going a step further to get it personal, where should they start? Like, how do you even think about deconstructing this?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of tools and many that are our partners that think about like mapping out the journey and the orchestration and customer service. For us, where we really guide our clients is thinking about what's your strategy overall? What are you trying to do? Drive revenue, drive eyeballs, launch a loyalty program, and then what are the pieces of content that your customer is going to experience.
Mm.
I'm sure both are managing large tech stacks. These consumer brands that we work with manage, I think average eMarketer said was 17 different tools. So they have an abundance of data available to them on who their customers are and what they're doing, but your customers aren't experiencing that. Like they don't know all of the cogs in the machine. All they know and all we know when we get one of these touch points is what's the content that I got and was it relevant to me?
Mm.
So I think that to really try to break it apart for marketers and to not feel overwhelmed, it's kind of like, let's look at that content and how can we make sure that, let's look at all of the data that we have, but how can I make sure that this email, which is telling MK about a vacation opportunity in Hawaii, is really targeted with, your past behavior and your browse history and kind of all of those things, to bringing it together to make sure that in the 30 seconds or less that you're going to skim that communication, that it really grabs your attention with something that's targeted to your interests.
That's super interesting. So it's almost as if, like, step one is like data and context, right? It's to get all that information into a centralized spot where you can understand and make sense of what people may want at any given point in time, and use
Mhm.
that data as your center axle, if you will, to be able to
Mhm.
then inform your content personalization.
Yeah, we like to think of ourselves as connective tissue. So we aren't ingesting or, we're not seeing basically your first party data, but we are bringing together your CRM data. We have dozens of integrations in our exchange that are different industry specific providers, things like airline pricing or loyalty points, or we work with Pegasystems, which is that next best action. So we're really bringing together as, the layer that is going to turn that into an experience that doesn't break down the seams.
Wow. So as they say in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. This is very powerful. And as a consumer, I can't say that any one company is like really crushing this. Like they're getting closer and better every time. But like what does success look like in this for a marketer who wants to take their content from just being content to personalized content?
Mhm. I think that success, I'm going to cite, because I think this was shared pretty widely on social, the Twitch year in review, which people, that was trending, I think, #1 on Twitter the day that it went out. That was built with Moveable Ink. And so that was something that people really felt like this company gets me. And they wanted to share, they wanted to. Strava as another example. Like we see a lot of these great year in review. The original Spotify year in review, where people just feel like their data is being used for something fun, and it's being used for something that can help make their experience better the next time they log back in. So I think that, there's a lot of different success KPIs that you have from your C-suite leadership, but it's also from the customers getting really excited, wanting to share, feeling like they're understood by a brand.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right in that last point, right? That they're understood. Like, not only are consumers craving a more authentic, a more real experience, they also want to make sure that that experience speaks to who they are as a person, that they feel seen in this like world of tons of noise and interruption. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that your platform also helps to take this like one to many way of thinking about content to drill it down to one to few. And you're even taking that step further to get one to one and allow and empower folks to say, oh yeah, that's like nobody else but me. Like this was clearly meant for me. And yes, I'm long overdue for a vacation in Hawaii. So
Yeah,
I'm very,
that's what I
very,
thought.
very likely going to be targeted by ads for a Hawaii vacation.
Just from us talking about this.
But as you think about marketers who are really struggling, like account-based marketing has gotten us closer, right? With account-based execution putting us closer to like the one to few type of marketing. Marketers who are trying to make that jump from the one to few to the one to one. What advice do you have for them to help use content to build that experience that's clearly just meant for one and only?
Yeah, I mean, I think from many of the brands that we work with, right, they're not at the volume that they're dealing with. Their one-to-one is always going to be something that's automated through technology. I think that one of the things that I've seen recently by another marketer was just how personas don't make sense. Maybe it was Alice's marketing, right? But it's that, everyone is a is, but can we really create a meaningful interaction that way? So I think, prioritization, I'm sure there's more to it, but that's where you start.
For the record, we may have been the ones that said person over persona. I think somewhere back in the Alice archives, you can see that. But what I think is also really interesting too is like this concept of like, you can have a touch, and like touches, like, I don't love to be touched, I don't like to be hugged, my torture me all the time on that. But then you can have a touch and nothing can come of that, right? And then you can have an interaction, which in theory, by the definition of interaction, it's bi-directional, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you can take it a step further and you can create that one-to-one moment where like, not only did you use this information really well to present with me really great tailored one-to-one content, like you also evoked emotion in me, but like ideally trust, right? Because we're trading in the economy of trust these days. And we're also like ideally a net positive, like a happy, like a euphoric almost state out of that experience as well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what you said about evoking emotion. One of the sales reps that I work with, his name's Jack. He's phenomenal, and he was pitching a ticketing software and actually photoshopped himself going to a Jonas Brothers concert and sent the picture, like sent the photoshopped picture along with, some value add content about how we might be able to work together. And so he ended up, being able to kick off a conversation that way. So I think the emotion is a really important thing. You can like spew details about the things that you've uncovered about them online, but I think also being able to understand like they're a person and this might lighten their day. And that might be something that, you're able to get a conversation going.
I think that is such a poignant example, to be thinking about what impact you're making on the other person on the receiving end of your marketing. And I think it's a really good call to action for marketers who, we're so used to high velocity, high volume automation, get it out the door. And we're not always as thoughtful or intentional to curate that experience that it feels like someone spent hours photoshopping themselves at a Jonas Brothers concert. Like, we should all be thinking about making content with that much thoughtfulness.
Yeah. And I think it kind of also ties to what you said about not liking to be touched. None of us as marketers, we want to think that, okay, I'm just this person's sales target and that's why they're reaching out to me. So I think that that's, part of it too, is being respectful and understanding like, hey, maybe I don't want to say, I saw that you have 3 kids and your dog's name is Boomer. But you can, kind of respecting boundaries. And I think that that's something that marketers can do with a product like ours too, is, balance the digital creep of what I do know, and then what's going to seem like maybe crossing a boundary of like, it's unspoken that there's people are tracking this types of information, but kind of what do you action on?
It's so interesting. We hear that a lot as well too. It's like, like personal in and of itself is a very evocative term, because personal is like, it's personal. It's like, that's my personal information. And yet we often get the question of like, when is it creepy? Like, where is that break point of like value add? You just surprised and delighted me versus you turn me off because you're talking about my 3 kids and my dog named Rudy. Like, this is a little too much information. Like, how do marketers balance that line between value add and creepy?
I think one of the things is whether it's authentic to your brand. So we worked with a home security provider a number of years ago, and their emails were actually targeted to say like, when you're sleeping at night, your house is protected, and that the kind of changed based on the time of day, but it really worked for them because that was kind of what their brand was, talking about making you feel safe and secure, and kind of a nod to I don't know what their product was. So it worked. I've read studies that say that especially younger generations like Gen Z and whatever the new ones are, they're more willing to trade.
All the way back around now. We got to be at Gen A.
We're at one of them. But they say that people are more willing to trade off their personal information if they feel like there's a lot of value provided, and they're even more willing when it's tied to the service that they're receiving. So if it's customer service from a brand, or any kind of personal things like a doctor's visit, or they're more willing to part for their information if they feel like it's going to deliver that value. But I think that it's also just being conscious of who you're speaking to and how comfortable they might be with knowing that you have that information.
It's so interesting that you also bring up that point about like comfortability and the responsibility that comes into play when you are giving someone your information. You're almost like, the more information you're asking for, the more you're expected to deliver a really exceptional experience end to end. That calls to mind to me like Amazon, like our Amazon is the backbone of this. It's like the third member of our family in our tiny little household. Like, with Amazon has so much information about who we are as people, but they never misuse it in a way that makes my life feel interrupted or disrupted. They always try to find value add ways to enhance my day to day because of the information they're gathering about myself and my fiance.
Yeah. And I think that they are definitely obviously an example of, they've developed so many solutions and figured out ways that, it's utilitarian and not kind of in your face and over the top about kind of what they have access to.
I love it. I love it all. Okay. So going to try to recap all the things that we talked about as
Yeah.
well too, to make sure I learned something new about personal experience. And the first and most important thing that we ended our conversation on today is about trust. What you do to still gain and maintain the trust in the audience that you are curating personalized content and personal content for will make or break your ability to use Moveable Ink effectively and use personalization effectively. So that's number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
With good power comes great responsibility, of course. Two is understanding how the timing is very important in the customer life cycle, and how that timing can impact, again, make or break the creepy vibes or the good vibes. And then third is also making sure your data is a really, like, that's got to be squeaky clean, because again, weaving through the last 2 points, if your data is sending you off in one direction, you will present some information and or content that is completely interruptive, not value add, or worse, like just like not at all registering on someone's emotional scale. You're just like nothing. You're just like passive content that they ingested. So those 3 things, when combined, can take stale static content and turn it into personalized content that is truly one to few or one to one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was great. And, you know, at risk of this being a shameless plug, I will say we work with over 700 brands, and they work with us because they understand those principles and really want to lead on a great foot with their customers and make sure that, you know, they're delivering that value add, they're maximizing the information that they have to, you know, deliver that meaningful interaction and experience.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to learn more about you as the VP of Marketing at Moveable Ink, where can they get in contact with you? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Sure, I'm happy for you to share my LinkedIn with this episode. And my information's on the Moveable Ink site as well.
Excellent. And then if people want to get to Moveable Ink, is it moveableink.com?
Yes, it is. It's MOVABLE. I'll just call that out because we do get a lot of misspellings with MOVE. So that's the easiest way to find it.
Excellent stuff. Well, have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much again for joining me on Office Hours.
Yeah, thanks for having me.